The story of Jezebel unfolds like an ancient drama, but its lessons resonate intensely in our modern times. A woman who not only influenced a king but shaped the destiny of an entire nation. What can this controversial figure teach us? Over the centuries, we see that the spirit of Jezebel still infiltrates our communities, bringing with it the seduction of immorality and the fragility of faith. And, after all, what lies behind so many divisions in contemporary churches? Imagine a scenario where, instead of purity, there arises a superficiality that seduces the senses but impoverishes the soul. What happens when leaders stray from the path of truth? The story of Jezebel is not just a tale from the past, it is a living warning about the dangers we still face today. The idolatry and immoral practices that infest the altars are reflections of an ongoing spiritual battle. Like Elijah, we are called to rise and confront these influences. The question is, are we ready to resist? Prepare yourself for a deep reflection that could change the way you see your own faith and the community around you. The narrative of Jezebel is one of the most intriguing in the Bible. She is known as the wife of King Ahab, one of Israel's most controversial monarchs. Jezebel, originally from Tyre, brought with her a series of practices and ideologies that challenged Israelite faith. The historical context in which she lived is crucial to understanding her actions. At a time when the people of Israel were struggling to maintain their religious identity, Jezebel stood out as a powerful figure, but also as an antagonist to the established tradition. Her marriage to Ahab was not just a personal union, but a political alliance that had great repercussions on worship in Israel. By marrying Ahab, Jezebel not only became queen but also imposed her Canaanite beliefs and practices, especially the worship of Baal. Her influence was so intense that, in a short time, the worship of Yahweh, the God of Israel, began to be overshadowed. The story of Jezebel is, therefore, a tale of power, influence, and the consequences of straying from genuine faith. The narrative also reveals how Jezebel used her position to promote her interests. With remarkable cunning, she manipulated events and people around her, showing that, although her origin was foreign, her ambition and political skills were noteworthy. This combination of beauty, intelligence, and cunning made her a feared and respected figure, but also deeply hated. Her story is not just about a powerful woman but about the dynamics of power that exist in any society. Moreover, Jezebel's figure is often associated with immorality and spiritual corruption. Her negative influence was not limited to the worship of Baal but extended to practices that were contrary to God's teachings. Jezebel's story, therefore, serves as a warning about the dangers of external influences that can erode the faith and morals of a nation. Her legacy continues to resonate in contemporary discussions about faith and morality. Jezebel's influence in Israel cannot be underestimated. She was one of the main forces responsible for leading the people away from the worship of the true God, fervently promoting the idolatry of Baal. Her power and influence affected not only the royal court but echoed throughout the kingdom, leading many to abandon their traditions and beliefs. The worship of Baal became a common practice, and the cults dedicated to this pagan god proliferated in Israel. This change did not happen abruptly. Jezebel used a combination of persuasion and coercion to consolidate her power. She did not hesitate to eliminate the prophets of God, seeking to silence any voice that opposed her agenda. This strategy of fear and control ensured that many felt threatened in expressing their faith. Thus, the worship of Baal became not just a spiritual choice but a matter of survival for many Israelites. Furthermore, Jezebel promoted the construction of altars and temples dedicated to Baal, transforming Israel into a center of paganism. These places of worship were not just physical spaces but symbols of a new era of idolatry that was taking root in the hearts of the people. The cultural transformation that Jezebel brought was profound, leading to confusion between religious practices and the morality of the people. This mixing of beliefs eventually corrupted the essence of worshiping God. The consequences of this influence were not limited to the spiritual aspect. The worship of Baal brought with it a series of immoral practices and rituals that were foreign to Israelite tradition. The sensuality and promiscuity, often associated with Baal's cults, infiltrated society, distorting the morality of the people. Jezebel's influence ultimately transformed Israelite culture, creating an environment that favored corruption and decadence. Jezebel's influence serves as a warning for today's world. The way a single person can shape the culture and spirituality of a people is a powerful lesson about the responsibility we all have in maintaining our faith and morality. Just as Jezebel had her impact, we are constantly bombarded by influences that can divert our attention and devotion from what truly matters. The growing presence of sexual immorality in contemporary churches is an issue that deserves attention. Many faith communities, which should be bastions of morality and holiness, are facing increasing challenges in the face of practices that stray from biblical principles. Sensuality, which was once seen as something to be avoided, now subtly but steadily infiltrates worship services and the daily practices of the faithful. This transformation does not come without consequences. The normalization of sexual immorality within churches can lead to a cooling of spirituality, weakening the connection between the believer and God. When the boundaries of morality are transgressed, the relationship with the sacred is affected, and worship becomes a mere ritual, devoid of meaning. The practice of immorality, far from being just an individual behavior issue, becomes a collective matter that impacts the entire community. Moreover, sexual immorality in churches can cause divisions and internal conflicts. When members of the congregation feel comfortable living in ways contrary to biblical teachings, tensions arise between those who wish to follow God's precepts and those who advocate for a more permissive view. This division can erode the unity of the church, creating an environment of distrust and hypocrisy, where many feel pressured to hide their true beliefs and behaviors. On the other hand, it is important to consider how the church deals with this issue. The leadership's approach to sexual immorality can be a determining factor in the spiritual health of the congregation. An attitude of acceptance and understanding can open space for honest dialogues, where people feel safe to discuss their struggles and seek help. However, when the church becomes a place of condemnation, many may drift away, opting to hide their difficulties. In light of this scenario, reflecting on sexual immorality in churches is crucial. It is a call to introspection and the pursuit of genuine spirituality that aligns with Christ's teachings. Facing this issue requires courage and a willingness to dialogue, but above all, a renewed commitment to the principles of holiness and integrity that the Bible teaches us. The fight against immorality is not just an individual battle but a collective responsibility that must be faced with seriousness and love. Manipulation and spiritual control are themes that cannot be ignored when studying Jezebel's influence. Her ability to manipulate events and people around her is a clear example of how power can be used for selfish purposes. In the context of the modern church, this same dynamic is reflected in leaders who, instead of guiding their flocks with love and integrity, choose to control and manipulate, leading many to drift away from true faith. This comparison between Jezebel and contemporary leaders reveals a troubling pattern. Spiritual manipulation often disguises itself as authority and spiritual zeal, but in reality, it can lead to an environment of fear and oppression. Leaders who behave this way create a culture where doubt and insecurity thrive, making it difficult for church members to discern God's voice amid so many external influences. This distortion of spiritual leadership is a reflection of what Jezebel did in her time, using her power to silence prophetic voices and promote her agenda. Furthermore, manipulation can manifest in various ways, from distorted teachings to religious practices aimed more at control than true worship. Often, churches become places where blind obedience is encouraged, and any questioning is seen as a threat to unity. This approach can lead to a cult of personality, where the leader is placed on a pedestal, and their influence becomes absolute. Thus, what should be a community of faith transforms into a space of domination and control. Spiritual manipulation can also have devastating consequences for the emotional and spiritual health of church members. Those who feel pressured to conform to imposed standards may end up drifting away from faith, leading to the growth of resentment that can last for years. The search for approval and acceptance in a controlled environment can result in identity and faith crises, where the true relationship with God is compromised. The persecution of God's prophets during Jezebel's era was striking and tragic. Jezebel, with her zeal for Baal and her aversion to true worship, did not hesitate to eliminate those who opposed her vision. The prophets, who were God's spokespersons, became targets of a relentless hunt, reflecting a society that rejected truth in favor of convenient spirituality. This dynamic of power is a warning for today's world, where many voices calling for truth face similar opposition, whether in religious or social settings. The Bible recounts that Jezebel went so far as to exterminate the Lord's prophets, creating an atmosphere of fear and oppression. This atmosphere not only silenced prophetic voices but also discouraged many from standing against the corruption that dominated Israel. To understand the depth of this persecution, it is crucial to observe the socio-political context of the time, where the worship of Baal was imposed as a norm, while faithfulness to God became an act of rebellion. This inversion of values is a theme that echoes through the centuries, challenging Christians to stand firm in their faith. Beyond the physical aspect of persecution, there was a significant spiritual impact. The prophets who survived, like Elijah, faced not only threats to their lives but also doubt and discouragement. The constant struggle between truth and falsehood, good and evil, is a timeless narrative that teaches us the need for perseverance in difficult times. Today, many face similar challenges as they try to uphold principles that seem outdated in a society that values acceptance and conformity. The persecution of prophets also reveals the fragility of the collective faith of the people of Israel. When truth is silenced, confusion and idolatry thrive. It is alarming to note that in many contemporary contexts, the rejection of truth still leads to the marginalization of voices seeking to promote a return to the essence of faith. This reality invites reflection on how today's church deals with voices that challenge the prevailing culture and the need to support those who stand up in defense of truth. Ahab, the king of Israel, is often remembered not only for his actions but also for his weakness as a leader. His submission to Jezebel's influence highlights the dangers of corrupted leadership, which places personal and political interests above morality and justice. By allowing himself to be swayed by Jezebel's manipulation, Ahab became a symbol of how a lack of integrity can compromise not only an individual but an entire nation. It is interesting to observe how this dynamic can be seen in contemporary contexts, where leaders who should guide the people towards truth often become accomplices in corrupt practices. The weakness of Ahab manifests in various decisions he made throughout his reign. His alliance with Jezebel and the adoption of the worship of Baal are clear examples of how a leader can stray from the correct path under the influence of external forces. This capitulation was not only a reflection of his lack of courage, but also an indication of how the lack of firmness in values can lead to devastating consequences for society. Ahab's story teaches us about the importance of leaders who are willing to resist pressure and maintain integrity, even when it is difficult. Furthermore, Ahab also represents the difficulty that many face in making the right decisions when surrounded by negative influences. His inability to oppose Jezebel and her wicked plans is a warning about the risks of surrounding oneself with people who do not share ethical and moral values. This reality is quite present today, where leaders in various spheres may find themselves in similar situations, being pressured to compromise their beliefs in favor of acceptance or power. Ahab's submission not only undermined his leadership but also had a profound impact on the people of Israel. The idolatry and corruption that settled during his reign affected not only the spiritual sphere but also social relations and the collective morality. Ahab's example is a reflection of how weakness in leadership can provoke a domino effect, leading to a general degradation of society's values. Every leader must be aware of their influence and the legacy they leave behind. Elijah's confrontation with the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel is one of the most dramatic episodes in the Bible. In this event, Elijah stood as a defender of truth in a scenario dominated by idolatry and corruption. He challenged the prophets of Baal to prove the veracity of their gods, demonstrating not only courage but also unwavering confidence in the God of Israel. Mount Carmel thus becomes a symbol of the struggle between truth and lies, a theme that deeply resonates in our days. During the confrontation, Elijah proposed a test. Both sides should prepare a sacrifice and invoke their gods, and the God who responded with fire would be recognized as the true one. This proposal not only exposed the futility of Baal worship but also highlighted Elijah's boldness at a time when many might have hesitated. This determination is a powerful lesson for today, when many hesitate to stand for the truth out of fear of reprisals or rejection. Baal's response was a deafening silence, while Elijah, on the other hand, fervently invoked the name of the Lord. Fire descended from heaven, consuming the sacrifice and proving the veracity of the God of Israel. This moment was not just a victory for Elijah but also a call for the people of Israel to repent and turn to the Lord. Elijah's ability to hear and obey God's voice amidst corruption is an inspiring example for all who face similar pressures in their own lives. Beyond the victory, Elijah's confrontation on Mount Carmel also highlights the importance of repentance. After witnessing God's power, the people of Israel were confronted with the need to choose between true worship and idolatry. This choice is valid for us today, as we are often confronted with decisions that can define our spiritual journey. Just like the people of Israel, we need to evaluate whom we are truly serving and seek a genuine return to truth. In summary, the confrontation on Mount Carmel is a powerful illustration of the struggle between faith and idolatry. Elijah's courage in standing against the majority and his confidence in the true God are an example for all of us. In times of uncertainty and confusion, we must remember that truth will always prevail, and the willingness to confront lies is essential for the spiritual health of our communities. Elijah's legacy encourages us to be brave in our own journey of faith. When we talk about the spiritual consequences of idolatry, it is impossible to ignore the profound impact this practice has on the life of the Christian community. Idolatry often presents itself in disguise, seducing the faithful to divert their focus from the true God. Instead of seeking the divine presence, many find themselves attracted to promises of material prosperity or emotional experiences that, while pleasurable, do not bring true spiritual transformation. This exchange is dangerous and results in a gradual departure from the essence of what it means to follow Christ. Moreover, idolatry creates a disconnection in interpersonal relationships among church members. When an individual places something or someone above God, this distorted priority reflects in their interactions. The pursuit of idol worship, whether physical or virtual, tends to create divisions, jealousy, and rivalries, undermining the unity that Christ so desired for his followers. Love for one's neighbor becomes secondary when personal interests and devotions become a Christian's main motivation. Another aspect to consider is how idolatry affects the understanding of what is truly sacred. The presence of idols, even subtle ones, can lead to a diminishing respect for the practices and teachings of the faith. Worship services become more about entertainment than genuine adoration. This not only distorts the message of the gospel but also contributes to a general spiritual weakening in the community, where superficiality replaces depth. Idolatry also has a cumulative effect on future generations. When younger generations observe their leaders and mentors engaging in idolatrous practices, they tend to normalize behaviors that can lead them away from a true relationship with God. This negative legacy perpetuates a cycle of spiritual deviation that can be difficult to break. It is essential that the Christian community recognizes this responsibility and intentionally seeks to cultivate an environment of authentic worship. Spiritual warfare is an undeniable reality in the life of every Christian. The Bible warns us about the evil forces that work around us, seeking to lead astray those who seek the truth. In this context, discernment becomes an essential tool for the faithful to navigate a world full of deceptions and seductions. Constant vigilance is necessary, for often what appears to be good intention can be rooted in evil and distorted influences. Discernment goes beyond simple critical analysis. It is a spiritual skill that must be cultivated through prayer and the study of the Word. When Christians dedicate themselves to deeply understanding the Scriptures, they become more adept at recognizing when something is not aligned with God's principles. This practice of discernment is not only beneficial for oneself but also for the community, as it allows the faithful to help each other remain firm in the faith and away from false doctrines. Spiritual warfare manifests in various forms: temptations, doubts, and often direct attacks on faith. Resisting these challenges requires a daily commitment to prayer and spiritual strengthening. When Christians unite in prayer, creating an environment of mutual support, they become a powerful force against evil influences. It is in this collective that immense power is found, capable of generating significant changes both in the individual and in the congregation as a whole. It is important to remember that discernment is not just an individual skill but also a collective responsibility. Faith communities should encourage open discussions about the spiritual battles they face and seek mutual guidance. This not only creates a sense of belonging but also strengthens the bonds within the church, promoting a culture of support and encouragement. Integrity is an essential value in the life of a Christian, especially in times of temptation and challenges. The story of Elijah provides us with a powerful example of how to remain firm in one's convictions, even when the pressure is intense. He faced not only the idolatry of his time but also the disdain and hostility of a queen who sought to silence the truth. Elijah's courage in maintaining his integrity is a call for Christians today to also resist the temptations that seek to divert their focus from God. Resisting temptation is a daily practice. In a world full of distractions and negative influences, Christians are constantly challenged to choose between what is right and what is convenient. This struggle is not easy, but it is essential to living a life that glorifies God. The Bible teaches us that temptation itself is not sin, but yielding to it is. Thus, the path to integrity involves recognizing the traps and deciding in advance how to respond to them. Elijah's example inspires us to seek divine wisdom in times of crisis. He not only prayed but also stood against the corruption that surrounded him. This active stance is crucial for resisting temptation. Christians must be willing not only to avoid sin but also to confront it. This means speaking the truth, even if it means going against the current of a culture that often glorifies what is wrong. Moreover, integrity also involves a commitment to truth and justice. When a Christian refuses to compromise on moral principles, they not only strengthen their own faith but also serve as a powerful testimony to others. Integrity is contagious. When one person stands firm, it encourages others to do the same. Thus, resisting temptation becomes a collective effort in which the community supports each other in their convictions. Finally, integrity and resisting temptation are fundamental to living a life that reflects the light of Christ. In a world that often values the opposite, Christians are called to be beacons of truth and morality. By following Elijah's example, it is possible not only to resist temptations but also to inspire others to do the same, building a community that seeks to honor God in all areas of life. And so, dear brothers and sisters, we come to the end of our reflection on the impactful figure of Jezebel and the lessons she brings us. It is impressive how this ancient story still resonates in our days, isn't it? The way Jezebel manipulated and seduced her time makes us question: are we truly vigilant against influences that can corrupt our faith? How are we standing up against the temptations that arise in our path? The battle we face is not only external but also internal. Each of us must be a guardian of truth, maintaining the integrity of our hearts and our community. And you, how have you dealt with these issues? Have you sought discernment in your decisions? If you felt touched by this message, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share your reflections in the comments. Your voice is important in this conversation. Together, we can strengthen our walk with God and encourage each other to resist the seduction of the world, always seeking spiritual purity. So, stay with us, and let's explore more transformative truths in God's Word together. See you next time.